Hello, KCIW listeners, and welcome to Curry Café. I'm volunteer Rick McNamer with host Ray Gary, KCIW's own famous radio personality. Every Sunday afternoon from 3 to 4, we put together a panel of guests to discuss topics of interest in our beautiful community by the sea. Listeners can participate in our show by texting in questions or comments to 541-661-4098. Again, that's 541-661-4098. And I just want to let everybody know, KCIW is an all-volunteer community radio station, and we depend on our volunteers, sponsors, and underwriters to keep us on the air. So if any listener out there would like to help us out or become part of KCIW, please go to kciw.org. Click on Get Involved. We'd love to hear from you. Again, that's kciw.org. Okay, now I'll turn it over to Mr. Ray to tell us about today's show.
Well, before I tell us about the show, I have to point out the obvious thing that if we had a little more money, we could afford equipment that worked when you push the button.
We had
and we would be on time.
Okay, we had a couple of
and if all of you out there that were getting more and more aggravated, open your wallet and send us some money so we can buy some decent equipment. Okay, now get into the show. We have a couple of distinguished guests, incredibly distinguished guests, both of them. And we're going to pass the mic over, and we're going to go around clockwise, and each going to tell us who they are, why they think they deserve to be here today.
They deserve it, and we know it. Go ahead, y'all.
You want me to go ahead?
Yes, sir.
My name's Hank Cunningham, and I'm a Brookings resident, Army veteran. I was in Vietnam in 1967-68. I was a combat medic in the 11th Armored Cavalry. I was a draftee, by the way. So that's part of my reason for Ray asked me if I'd be on the show. And I'm thinking, they're having been drafted at 19 years of age, really put my life course on a different direction than I had intended. On the positive side, it having been drafted paid for my education and did a lot for me. So I have no reservations or misgivings about having served.
Now that it's over, you have no misgivings.
What's that?
Now that it's over, there's no misgivings. Misgivings galore.
Since I survived.
Yes.
Was it Billy Joe or Bobby Joe?
Bobby Joe.
Bobby Joe has a song apparently about a friend who re-upped, and on his second tour of duty, which I never would have done. I felt very lucky to have survived one tour, but apparently he was a KIA on his second tour of duty, which could happen just like that.
Okay. Bobby, your turn.
Yeah, well, Bobby Joe Holman, it's always such a pleasure. This is my third time, actually, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, because Brother
starting
Ray
some
last
records.
Yeah, that happens because he's out so much, We run into him in a bar someplace. It's usually half loaded, and he says, "Hey,
right,
well, you're going to have me on your show again," so here he is.
That's for sure. But it's always such a pleasure and everything. And I was asked to play this song once again, and I played on the Jacques and Doc show, and for the first time that it's been aired, and then now today we'll do it again. But I wanted to give a little more insight of how the song became about, and about this person that I did not know the person, but hopefully I'll be able to clear up some things, and then we'll talk about that museum. Vietnam Museum that I really was impressed with.
Pretty powerful story, I know, behind it. Bob.
Yeah.
So
there we go. I'm here.
Do you want to start do the song first?
I was going to say, Bobby Joe, why don't you go ahead and tell the background of how you got inspired to write the song?
Well, we were just sitting here, and I was talking to Hank. Is how this all became about is I was in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I played music, and I was with a fellow that guitar luthier that built cigar box guitars. And he was he's still alive, he's a good friend of mine, still a retired lawyer and everything. And then he had moved down to Minnesota area, and he's one of these guys that walk into a room and within 10 minutes everyone knows who he is and he knows everybody. And so he happened to be in Yankton at a really neat restaurant called the Muddy Mo, and that's what they call the Missouri River, and Yankton is right on the Missouri River. And he found out that the owner of that restaurant was also the publisher of a very high-quality, wonderful magazine called South Dakota. And so he went over there and introduced himself and started talking, and he goes, I got a guy for you to interview. And so, the guy goes, well, so anyhow, he calls, well, in fact, we'll call him up. So he calls me up and everything. Hey, I've got this Bernie Hunoff, who is the publisher of South Dakota Magazine. And I told him about you and see maybe we can get you on his magazine. And so that's what he did. And I was so honored and flattered to be a part of that magazine. And then I went down to visit him because we were living in Rapid City, and we went down to Yankton, which is right on the Missouri. I never had been there. And we'd talk, and it was neat, and I played some at his little restaurant, and then they have a neat place called the Boathouse, and a bigger place and venue right there, besides the magazine. When leaving, he had said that his mom was a poet, and she had written this little book of her poetry. And so I go, God, I'd love to hear that. Maybe I could get a song out of it or something like that. Went home, went back up to Rapid City, and then we'd communicate, and he goes, well, check on page 62 or something. It's about a Vietnam veteran, because he knew that I was in Vietnam. I was a Vietnam veteran, but I wasn't in the bush. I was out in the ocean and experienced some theater in the China Sea and all that stuff on submarines. But I got there, and I read this, and it's just a really moving story about a fellow, and we all know, because we've all been in the service and at Vietnam, that we're our father's son, and you just go. Doesn't mean like, hey, I can't wait to go to Vietnam, but you go. You don't, because I was raised in an area where some of the guys were so chicken that, blowing off fingers to stay out, or the biggie was to go up to Canada,
Yeah.
and not go. And I could not live with myself, so that's how I went. But anyhow, there in the Yankton area is all farm areas. Farms. And all the farms have large families. They have 8, 9, 10, 12 kids, man. They pump these kids to work the farm. And so that meant that they were real good pickings of being drafted, because of when I was told, the only way that you could really get out of it was you could get married, or you had to be in school, and you had to have like big killer grades before they would come and get you. I mean, your number was way down the list and everything. So here's the farmers' kids, the boys, and most of them, they all had to stay there and work the farm. Well, then bingo, they were just getting picked picked and they went into Vietnam. And this particular fellow, in the little towns, everyone knows everybody, and all the events everybody goes to. Somebody gets married, the whole town goes to. Somebody dies, everybody goes to this. It's just the way it is. And so he went in, and he was actually in the Fighting 69th A Company. It was a tank battalion and it was the middle-sized Patton tanks that were over there. I didn't even know that they had tanks over in over there.
They had them in armored cav, yeah.
Yeah, and so anyhow, he was in that, and he made it. He made his tour, and so the whole town was all. He comes back, and they're all excited. Gosh, he made it back. He made it back. And then he tells his mom that he's re-upped for another tour. And of course, it just, everyone, why would you know that? But he figured, because he said if he went back, then some other farmer's son could stay, didn't have to go. And that was his concept. And of course, then that's when he went back, still that same battalion, and then he was killed. And a big major, I guess, some sort of rocket or something had hit the tank and just, of course, just killed everybody in the tank. So it just devastated the family, but the township and everybody that knew him. And they had still been hurting for over 50 years about that. And so I thought by writing this song that I could maybe give some closure to it and everything. And I met these wonderful people, then the song process started. So I started doing the melody and everything, and I thought that was pretty good, but then my words were kind of lacking, the kind of deal. So I asked Bernie, which is the publisher and a writer. And so he goes, yeah, gosh, I thank you, Bob Joe. I'd like to help. And he writes these really good because he knew Richard. He knows the family. He knew the whole story. So he writes these really good words. So now we've got this song that's 2/3 done. That's really nice melody, really good words, but the chords, all I was playing was these little simple, like 3 little chords, and they sounded good the first 3 minutes of the song, but it was the same chords going over and over. So I called my partner, which is my wife's son-in-law, and his son, which had just graduated from Berklee School of Music in Boston, and he happened to be home, and they made the chords. So now to me, it's so much better because of the flowing of the chords, and so that's why I say that this particular song had four
contributors.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And they go, well, no, you have to do that. No, it's your Bob because it was your project. No, I was stumped, and they come in and helped and everything. So that's the story of him. And the song is it's called Richard's Story, and I'll play it here. And I had to bring the words so I wouldn't forget, because you get involved in the thing and you want to do good. And let's see, where are we here?
Now I'm going to chime in a little bit, Bobby.
Sure.
This song is going to be kind of like premiered at the Vietnam Memorial there in Missouri, Wentzville, Missouri, I believe.
Yes.
And we had talked about that. And
I'm just so flattered. The family and I, especially the sister Janet.
Okay.
She, her and her husband is the one we really talk talk with that I really kind of know.
Yeah.
I think there's still about 8 siblings left, 7 or 8 siblings, and but I deal with her, and then I got a call from her that said that her and her husband were traveling somewhere, and I guess in Missouri, and they heard about this museum. And it was supposed to be the first Vietnam museum. And the story was that the owner, the father had owned like 90,000 acres of land. He was a big land baron, and he had a son. One of his sons went over to Vietnam and was killed. So he sold off that land and he built this museum in his honor. But then all of the Vietnam veterans that had passed away over there. And she said, so she told the story about the song and everything, and they want to have that song at the museum. And that's just
What an honor, man.
I'm just about ready to cry
Well,
because of that's what I wanted. The whole thing is I wanted to give like that, because that's what I can do. I wasn't in the bush. I didn't have to do it. I mean, I had some pretty hair-raising experiences in the submarine, but nothing like being in the bush and like what Richard and what happened to him and stuff.
And 2 of our people here, Ray and Hank,
Yeah.
know that
And
story.
You,
We'll get,
okay, you're a Vietnam veteran. You were just
Vietnam era.
Yeah,
correct.
in the era, and the same thing. I mean, I've been challenged on that, and I would be the first one to say that, I wasn't in the bush, but I wear that hat very proudly because
bet.
I was in the China Sea, chased by a Russian cruiser for a week and a half, and with depth charges, and like in a movie and all this stuff, and that's another story. So that museum. So in fact, after I finish the show a little later on tonight, I'm going into a recording studio and record it. And I want to do it raw like this. I want it that if somebody would like to play it and learn it, that they could sit in their living room with their guitar and just learn the simple chords and sing it, as opposed to a big production and
Right on,
with,
man.
horns and
Yeah. A song like this probably is going to be better off that way.
Well, yeah,
Anyway.
because it touched me.
With such
It's a
wonderful
real touching now.
message.
It's in sections here, and let's see here. I'm gonna. Yeah. So. But so if you like, I'll give it
why
a
don't
whirl
we go
here.
ahead and let's hear the song that's going to be at the memorial.
Richard left us all, left the farm. Left us all for Uncle Sam. Prayed goodbye at Sigel Church. Flew 8,000 miles to Vietnam. College ain't for a farmer's son. Corn too low and rain too poor. Richard said he might still go to school. But first he had to go to war. Halfway around the world. The jungle was a bitter place. Richard tried to make it sweet. soldiers with angel's grace. Richard left us all, left the farm, left us all for Uncle Sam. Pray goodbye at Signal Church. Flew 8,000 miles to Vietnam. Hurrah, hurrah, Richard's home. Home for good, we hope, but forevermore. Then he told his mom, he couldn't stay, signed up for another tour. So we went all back to church. Richard packed and went away. Said if he went back to Nam, another farmer's son could stay. Richard left us all, left the farm, left us all for Uncle Sam. Said goodbye at Signal Church. Flew 8,000 miles to Vietnam. Now Richard's home for good. His armor tank became a wound. So we went all back to church. Prayed a prayer, laid him in his tomb. First one home now, he sleeps. Underneath the pure white Dakota snow.
Well, how awesome is that, man? Boy, I tell you.
With a few screw-ups, but
Well,
I can't seem to get through this thing. I practice it. Oh, yeah, I got it out.
Kind of the irony of that is he said that if he went, some other farmer's son wouldn't have to go.
There's the hook.
But, of course, that wasn't true. There wasn't like, in the Civil War, you could actually hire somebody to take your place.
Oh,
Or
I didn't know that.
Go in your, yeah, a lot of people did that. If you had a little money, you hired somebody.
well, but still, what a magnanimous effort for
Yes.
somebody to think that
A gesture.
Yeah, a gesture, right. I'll go so somebody else. I bet that story probably was,
1,000.
who knows?
Well, that's right. That was I was going to take it to the next step,
Good.
and that was maybe like do a documentary, because what I got really out of this was obviously what he did was just unbelievable. But the thing was of how it affected the family and the township, the people. Man, these people just they still get choked up about it and everything. And I was going to maybe like try to do a documentary, and I went to a film workshop and all this because I have experience being on films and stuff.
Yeah.
And but then I got to think, man, I don't want to do that. I don't want to fire that back up.
You
know?
mean fire what? The Vietnam War in general?
Well, the death of him.
Oh.
Because everybody, they've been dealing with it for so long, but Janet, I had projected that to her, and She, oh, but don't give up, you know,
Yeah.
kind of a, and then this museum thing. So to me, that's better than trying to do a documentary about it, because I thought about the families, but then I thought how many other tens of thousands of Vietnam veterans that happened. You know, my school, there was one guy that went in. His name was Toby Street, and I knew him. I wasn't big time, did things with him, friends with him, but he was a nice guy. And he was a paratrooper, and he was dead before he hit the ground, because there's.
And that would happen.
Yeah. Oh, they just started coming down. Bang, 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 bang.
There was no rhyme nor reason to it.
Yeah, I know.
You know, the irony to me about your song is that all of us who served over there, you'd be getting towards the end of your first tour of duty. They were 12-month tours of duty. Then you'd be offered the opportunity to re-up. And you'd hear all these advantages about, well, you could do another tour there. And
Yeah.
You get
get all
that
this rank and more money.
Oh,
and
yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
Get that
And
extra
I
six.
passed on the opportunity.
Oh,
and it turned out to be just before the Tet Offensive of December 1967. And I wasn't pressing my luck. I was 21 years old at the time, and so I chose to leave.
How could you walk away from that extra $65? Tax-free money, tax-free.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah, I
better
heard
than
that.
no
That was
tax
part
on
of the-
tips, I'm sure.
That was part of the sales pitch, yeah.
it's-
I grew up with this guy, and he was older than I am, but he went to Vietnam, but he kept going back, and because then I'm sure that he was way away from the action and everything, and he was like a storekeeper or something, you know.
They were great jobs.
You know, to me, he reminded me like a Bilko, you know, shimming and shamming and doing it, because he couldn't wait to get back. He'd do his tour and go back. They'd give him more money and everything, and of course he wasn't even close to what was going on.
Well, some guys actually seem to enjoy it.
I know.
I couldn't wait to get out of that.
I was going to say, at the time, I was always surprised at the people that were right in the thick of it and cheated death, if you will, and then turned right around and go back.
You become kind of an excitement junkie. It gets into you. I can remember for a while, after I got back, missing certain things. Not being shot at thing, but it was, you were there for a year, you're ingrained in it 24 hours a day, and you've been training for it and everything, and sometimes coming home is almost anticlimactic.
Well, and then back then, coming home to a lot of people that didn't respect what you actually did, given to your country, and then getting, yelled at, spit on.
I never experienced that.
Nobody ever said anything to my face, but there was something in the looks and the attitude.
Yeah,
For sure.
and the general mood of the country too.
Yeah.
I never experienced anything like that at all. If anything,
Well, that's good. And
I was
I mean,
praised for my patriotism. And it wasn't patriotism. The option was jail. You call that patriotism, then that's what it
But
is.
still, you went.
yeah.
You went, man, and I don't belittle yourself that much.
Well,
I know a lot of people went in because they had to.
I have a discount card for certain places, and it's always, thank you for your service. And my answer is always, I was drafted. Don't thank me. I didn't go on purpose.
That's exactly what I say, Ray.
Yeah.
You don't need to thank me. I was drafted. I had no choice.
You talk about the town missing this guy and everything while he was gone. We knew what we were doing every day, but did our parents, did our wives, did our friends, and I'm sure they lived 365 days of waiting for that guy to knock on the door and tell them that you weren't there no more.
I'm sure that was a big part. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think I was a medic, combat medic, and I think Ray was too, right?
No, he's a combat medic as well.
Yeah. And the funny thing about how do you become nobody volunteers to be a combat medic.
No, you got drafted to be a hero.
You take a battery of tests, assuming you're somewhat literate. Chances are you would wind up as a medic or a clerk. One of the two. And in my case, and Merrily Ray's, we ended up as medics. It's the worst possible job to have there.
Something in my testing showed them that. I mean, I should have copied. I should have copied the guy next to me.
I don't know what it was. I didn't even like the sight of blood when I.
Well, that's when.
Oh, then you're a medic.
Well, not.
At the end of basic training, the sergeant is giving out all the orders, and I've got these orders to go to. What was the name of the fort? What in San Antonio?
Sam Houston.
Sam Houston in San Antonio, and it said 95B, which of course meant absolutely nothing to me. And I took him and showed him to the sergeant. He says, "Oh, you're going to the Country Club of the Army. Fort Sam Houston is really nice." And he was right about that.
Really nice.
And I said, "Well, what's this 95B thing?" And he says, "Oh, you're going to be a medic." I said, "I pass out if I cut myself shaving." I said, "I don't think that's going to work."
You know, San Antonio is about the only climate I can think of that's worse than Vietnam.
Really? Yeah.
And so we did. That's where all medics would do their
Yeah.
medic training at Fort Sam.
The thing I remember most about that training is there was big signs all over the place: 0 defects, 0 defects.
Yeah.
Everybody gets through. So you couldn't flunk your way out of it.
No,
Because what if you flunked the test? You had to go for special training, which was at night, of course, on your own time, and it was just boring nonsense.
yeah.
The instructor would talk about the location of the fingernails and things like that. It was punishment, in other words, flunking the tests that were not very difficult. But the final, one of the final tests, they have a practical. And you go from station to station, and at the station there's a casualty, and the sergeant is there describing what's wrong with this person. And so what would you do? And if you got the answer right and you set the bone or whatever, you got 6 points, or whatever the points were. And if you tried and screwed it up, you got 4 points. And if you said, "I haven't a clue," you got 3 points. 3 points was the passing mark. So, well, nobody failed that.
Little did you know.
I was asking Hank, so how long was it? This
As I recall, medic training was it 10 weeks?
10 weeks.
Right?
10 weeks of wonderful.
And then
Yeah.
after that, you'd go to what they called AIT, and that was, I believe, another 10 weeks, which was more intensive combat training. And mine was went from Fort Sam Houston, horrible, hot, humid climate, back to Fort Riley, Kansas, where it was freezing. And that's where we did our jungle training, was at Fort Riley, Kansas.
Jungle training in the ice.
So you went to training after MTC. I got no combat training at all. We had what they call Vietnam indoctrination for all the people that were going to go to Vietnam.
Yeah.
And that included a lot of the medics were non-combatants.
Yeah.
And they weren't going to carry guns or anything. So we had to have some training for everybody of that. And that consisted of sergeants who had done a tour there, telling war stories, all of which was, shall we say, somewhat exaggerated. We found out when we got there. Yeah. And then they took you out in the field where you went on supposed whatever we were doing, search and destroy or something, and
search and destroy.
Have these phony battles, and that was the extent of the combat training. That and basic training, ain't much when it comes to fire and movement and stuff like that. And first time I went out in the field, I landed on the helicopter, and we're all getting off and getting oriented, and I walked up to the sergeant, and I thought he was going to hit me. "Don't you ever come this close to me again." And we had to stay 15 meters apart, which is my big gripe every time I see war movies these days. They're always kind of walking right next to each other. We didn't work like that.
Yeah.
How'd you get into submarines? That's like a very honorable thing in the Navy, isn't it? Isn't that
it was I took boot down in San Diego
Uh-huh.
at Nimitz there, and so they're just like boot. They're running you and making you do this, making this, and keeping you tired and everything. And they say, okay, you got to be at 1,600 hours. You got to be over here at this big auditorium. So we all run in there and sit down, and so you're sitting there trying to keep awake. And then they had a submariner, and he was just a
Crazy person, you can say it.
but I think he was just a first class. But he had a lot of hash marks and everything in the submarine. Of course, you had to have the tattoos and all that. But he started talking. Okay, well, we're going to talk, about submarines. And I had some before even going on this. There's no way they could get me on one of them damn things. So the guy goes, well, first of all, I want to tell you, that you, because you're in this force, that you can eat any time that you want. And what's that? Well, you go in, you just have to clean up your mess. I'm hungry, slap on a big steak and everything. So I'm perking up a little bit. And he said, and then the protocol is regardless what grade you were, you had overnight liberty. It was just overnight.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't have to be back at, 0200 and all that stuff. So then I'm perking up. And then you get paid more money. So I go, whoa, and I'm thinking, God, I don't want to go on like a flat top where there's 5,000 guys on there. It's a city and everything. So, God, I'll give this a whirl. So there was 4 of us from our little company, and we go to Newland, Connecticut. And the first damn thing that they did was they put us in you had to pass these tests before you could even get into the school. And they had a big thing, and I think of it like as these big propane, big giant propane tanks that you see with the deal. Well, that was it. You get in there and go down, sit down there, and then they touch out of pressurized, and they took us down to 210 feet. We're going, and it gets real dense, and if you don't do it right, it just blows your ears out, and then they're supposed to grow back, but not as well. But I passed that. Okay, so then it comes, and the doozy was the buoyant ascent, and they had a big tank that was about, God, what was it, 250 feet wide, and it was 250 feet high, and it was a big water tank, and they used it for skin diving and all this diving stuff. And so they take you up at the very top, and you're right there, and they're talking, okay, now what we're going to do, this is the buoyant ascent, is you're going to go down 50 feet and put you in this little capsule. You're going to equalize to 50 feet below, and then when they open the hatch, and then of course the water, you're up like this, and it's all pressurized, and you take one breath and you step and start blowing, and they grab you, and then you go up. So, okay, so we got this far, let's give it a whirl, And so you're doing the stream, and there's divers there, and they're pulling you, and you're going up, and you're going, and about 3/4 of the way, you think you ran out of air, because at 50 feet below, you have 2.5 times more air because it's compressed. Well, the atoms were compressed, so the air's still coming out, but you're going, I'm going to die. And you come out, yelling, ho, 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 and, So you had to do it. That was the biggie. Then the second one, you had to go back down, and they had a thing called the stanky hood, and that was a Mae West with a cover over it. And they'd fill it up with air so you could breathe, and then you got in there and you had enough air to go up, and that was the testing, because if the submarine ever landed, at 50 feet, which that is no way those things would ever be that high up, you could get out, and and that's why you had to do that test.
So,
So
lost the thought of the question.
Well,
But
you're
that
saying,
was so the go and blow was 50 feet.
yeah.
And how many people made that?
Oh, there was maybe one or two that just couldn't handle it. They were just a nervous wreck and everything.
No, I assume you had a safety diver who had an occupied.
Well, yeah, that's it. When you stepped out, there was a diver right there into the capsule.
Yeah.
It was butts and muzzles, in this capsule, because there would be like 8, 9 guys like this ready. Okay, your turn, Holman, you're not, and then get under and they push your head down and, and all that stuff. So, and then you stepped in and there was a diver right there.
Yeah.
He's kind of making sure that you're going up, and then he transfers you to the next diver, and he's going around and he does it. And
How many guys made it to 50 feet without needing the diver?
well, everybody.
I mean, didn't everybody have to at some point
Had
grab
to.
the diver's air supply and?
Well, that wasn't. They had little capsules things that air, and they could stuff. I mean, the first time that I went, I screwed up because I was holding the air.
Yeah.
And he said, "Don't do that, because then that'll just blow up your lungs." And so they stuffed me into the thing, and I got my deal like this, and then I went back up. But then they made me go back down and do it again correctly, and then I did it a third time with the mistake.
When I took diver training, we had to do that at 30 feet.
Yeah.
And the idea was like you say, the air expands in your lungs, but
Sure.
I certainly didn't make it. I made it. I don't know. I know I was 10 feet from the top. And
Oh, it was, well, once you pass that, then becoming a submariner.
I can't sit in the back seat of a two-door car. I'll walk or take a cab if that's my options. And to me, it's just unbelievable to think of the fact that you're in this thing and people are dropping depth charges on you. And I see that in the movies. I can barely watch it in the movies.
Well, we were, the thing that I had a nervous breakdown was we went underwater for 62 days. Underwater for 62 days. And so you just, it's the sunlight. So it could be dark or, the daytime, but they'll have the lights on and you're mentally doing chores, and they always kept you busy doing things. And then when it was time for rest, to sleep, and then I always had to spend a watch.
And what was your function in Vietnam?
Well, the reason why we went there was our mission was that we were so far ahead of the Russians, especially in the Navy, is they were going to be firing. I was trained fleet ballistic missiles, which had the 16 missiles with the dual warheads, so it was 32 cities that would be destroyed by one submarine. And but they stuck me on a fast attack. But Russia was doing. They were firing a rocket off of an old pig boat, which is the old diesel boat, and they were firing it off topside. So it was just like a boat. This happened the other day when I was on the show. They're working up there. So
we have construction upstairs.
Yeah, and
we need money. If we had money, we could find a better location.
Thank you,
But
Ray.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
that's all right. Well, our mission was to film this, and they literally had about 100 ships going in an oval around, and the sub was in the middle. And so we went in like in a movie between the two ships. They knew we were in. I think they probably let us in.
Yeah.
And we took the pictures and everything. But then when we turned to come back out, they went to ram us. They tried to ram us.
Oh.
And so we dove far enough that we, because if it had been seconds later, it would have taken the sail. We would have been capsized or whatever, you know. But going down in the number 2 scope, it bent the scope, but it didn't break it off. It just bent it. So then here it started out, there was probably about 2 or 3 Russian ships chasing us. And we were able to, go back and forth. You could swim. The boat would actually swim underwater. It could just go like a porpoise, like this. But we couldn't go fast because of that periscope being bent over. So a couple of ships bailed out, and one chased us for about a week. I'd say maybe close to a week and a half. And they either ran out of fuel or they finally the hierarchy said, you're not going to catch these guys. Because we could, but they would be dropping depth charges whenever they thought was close, anything to thinking that they would get to us. But I can remember listening
I get a little woozy just hearing this story.
Well, I'm sure Hank's got
Hank
a lot
and me were
of,
both
a lot
on
better.
land, and I think that was.
What's that?
I said you and me were both on land. That was to me that was the better choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was getting drafted, all the people join the Navy, you sleep in real beds and stuff. I said no. If I'm in combat, I want to be where I can take care of my own self.
Yes,
I don't want to be on no tank. I can run away. I can dig a hole. I can do something.
Well, and you're not even talking about the country club of the military that I was in, the United States Air Force.
Yeah, there you go.
And I did not want to be in airplanes either. So the Air Force was out.
Yeah, my brother was in that.
I wanted to be on solid dirt.
Yeah.
Well, believe me, I wasn't flying the F-4s and the B-52s. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
You were working on them? Or?
Actually, my job, I was in from 71 to 74. And at that time, it was the big bombing campaign towards the end of the war. They called it Operation, I think, Linebacker or something like that. Yeah. It was 72 was the biggie. And I was in just the 3 support bases I was at was Utapao, Thailand, Kadena, Okinawa, and Anderson in Guam. All, Thailand and Guam are B-52 bases. Just, I couldn't believe the amount of ordnance. Our job was to basically store the bombs and then take them to the flight line and load them on.
Wow.
The amount of ordnance that got dropped in that country, I can't believe it's still there, man. And I hope none, we know that some didn't land in the right places also.
Sure, yeah.
But, and real back to the Vietnam Memorial that where we're talking about, and looking for the city.
It was in Missouri. It was something.
Wentzville, Missouri.
Yeah, Wentzville. Uh-huh.
So, and one thing I do like, and maybe they're all this way, but that Vietnam Memorial is for Vietnam veterans and veterans of Southeast Asia. That's where a lot of the support was coming from.
Ah.
Okay,
that's good. And one thing that I don't know if you found that information, but Janet said that you can buy a brick for $100, $99, and in honor of a veteran that you knew, and so I thought that was way cool. She's gonna because there was 2 Vietnam vets that perished in Yankton, just 2.
Okay.
And then, of course, there's the fellow that I grew up with, and I'm going to do that. But I thought that would be something really, really nice to besides having their on the wall and everything, but have a brick in their honor.
Now again, you say Yankton. I'm not. Is it a small? That was a small town.
Yeah, still is.
Well, and what you were talking about the whole town suffering, if you will. And I came from a small town, Loomis, California, out of Sacramento. But when I first got there into freshman in high school, one of their football stars, if you will, of the high school had just been killed in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And then I had a friend of mine when I was a sophomore who was, after he graduated, he got over there, and within a month he was killed. Ed Blagden was his name, and the other one was Gary Holsclaw. And boy, that still affects that little town.
You know,
Yeah, it was a real crapshoot too, and
Oh my gosh.
we had a euphemism over there, not a very nice one, better him than me, just this kind of black humor.
Black humor.
When people would not return from,
Yeah.
they called them search and destroy missions. They were more like search and get ambushed.
what search and destroy was, you go out and you walk around in the woods till they attack you.
Yeah.
That's what
Really?
Yeah, we would go out and just patrol someplace, which seemed to me like aimless wandering around.
Yeah.
And eventually you would run into a unit and they'd shoot at you. Then if you were lucky, you destroyed more of them than they did of you. But talk about that little town and missing this one guy who they made a big deal out of. I'm sure every time somebody's driving through the farm field or something and they see somebody out on a tractor or a piece of equipment or doing some work, they're thinking, well, that could be him.
Yeah, it was just touching, but like I said, it really opened my eyes. And then that was just one little town. I mean, all the thousands
Oh my God.
towns
God.
all through the United States, especially in the heartland, but even in California, because I think there was just two guys from my little town at the time. It was Rialto, California, and it was Toby Street, and then I didn't know if the other guy, but I think the veterans VA place, they have their names, fallen
Yeah.
veteran and blah blah blah.
Mhm.
And but I was going to ask is now Hank, you said you were drafted.
Yeah.
So you got the notice and everything. Is that how it?
Yeah, I was 19 years old. At the time, they didn't even have lottery or numbers.
Yeah, you just.
So I had
You know, it's your
not,
friends and neighbors. Remember?
Yeah.
Friends and neighbors have decided.
friends and neighbors, yeah. So next thing I knew, I was drafted at 19. So
You got the letter and all that.
yeah.
Okay.
And wasn't it a great way to get it? Greetings? Did it still
Yeah,
did it
greetings.
say
Yeah, it
greetings?
said greetings.
Oh, look, I've got something
But
good
then,
happening.
looking back on it, I've gotten so many benefits from being a veteran, especially having been a combat veteran, that I figure, what the hell? It could have been worse. I probably ended up in prison or something.
Yeah.
But who knows?
I would have to agree with that. I hated every second, every nanosecond I was in the Army. I hated, but I did benefit from it. Looking back
Big
over the years,
Man,
I
that's
have
what I-
veterans benefits, and it taught me there was places in the world other than Bethpage, Long Island.
Yeah.
I was a very provincial little New York kid, and
Really?
That was huge for me. And again, not a combat veteran, but the first time even basic training in San Antonio, of all places, is where, because everybody in the Air Force goes there.
Yeah.
Oh,
But,
right.
but I'm
Blackwell?
sorry to mention this, folks. Air Force basic training was 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So please spare me your stories about 8 and 10 and 12 weeks. But
did somebody gently come in the morning and, excuse me, time for formation?
right before tea
With
time, they
coffee?
did.
Yeah, surely. Oh, excuse me, sir. If you have a minute, could you meet us out there in the
Would you mind
quad?
doing 3 or 4 push-ups or no? I'm dissing the Air Force, man, but it was a good deal for
So
me.
you got drafted too?
No. I signed up.
Okay.
Look, that was I was pretty gung ho.
Sure.
I know there was problems back there, and I look back. I mean, would I go in again? You know what? I think I would.
Sure.
I think we all had some form of not Ray. Ray shaking his head. Violent is shaking his head.
I read someplace a while back that something like 70% of the Vietnam veterans would do it again, even knowing the outcome.
Yes.
Well, I'm one of the 30%, and they never even asked me. I guess they
Yeah.
I guess I'm going
they
back
looked
to
at me and
my.
they said, "No, don't ask him."
I'm going back to my 18-year-old mind, maybe. Or heck,
but it's what I had found, because I had talked with a good friend that was in the grew up with, and we talked about it, and he called it something like that you're your father's son. So you're expected to do it. You're expected to go.
Yeah.
There's a movie called One, and Metallica made a song from the movie. I would advise every one of you to see that movie. It's about a guy who goes in the military with the same thing. He asks his father, what should I do? And he says, well, you have to do this. Everybody does it.
Yeah, everybody.
The kid is asking him about democracy. What's this democracy I keep hearing about? And the father says, well, I don't know. He says it's something that men send their boys out to be killed for.
Yeah.
And the kid says, well, would you send me if I had to go? And he says, well, a man has to give up his son for democracy, not knowing a thing about what democracy. It's a great movie.
Yeah,
movie,
called One, huh?
One.
Well,
I think the movie's called One. Yeah.
My thing was that I joined as well, but you had to go over the draft board to let them know your status.
Okay.
And he looked up the name. Oh, Holman. Oh, yeah, you were going next sweep anyhow. So it was
okay.
Well,
look at the draw.
I could have just gone over to the draft board and said, "Hey, I'm in the Air Force," and they would have taken.
Well, they would have looked up your name.
I had a friend who played with a fairly famous rock band that traveled around the country, and he said every time I got a draft notice, he said, I'd love to go, but I don't live there anymore. Could you send me another location? And he claims he got away with it for the whole.
Well,
I'd love to go.
We are running out of time, but I want to go back real quick about the, again, not being in the jungle, being shot at, but the Air Force military. First time I ever was around people from Louisiana, New York, New Jersey. Because I was a California born and bred, and it was, you might have taken some crap every once in a while, but also it was great getting to know people out and then going to a foreign country. Again, wasn't in the jungles of Vietnam.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, no, I enjoyed that.
It's a world experience. And I think nowadays, I don't know, they're talking about doing the draft, but
get them.
Some kind of government service to get people out there. Not everybody can be in the military. I understand that.
I agree. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay, we're out of time, folks. So thank you all.
Hey, well, thank you.
And
It's a real pleasure.
okay, and we got to end the show. So you've been listening to KCIW 100.7 Brookings.
Real nice to meet you.
And if you want to donate, kciw.org.